What's up? All hell LA here. Coming with another one. Been very interesting couple of weeks, hasn't it? Well, today we're going to talk about Trump and the politics of the Confederacy, the party of Lincoln versus Confederates posing as Republicans. All right, a lot to digest, to get into. Alrighty, hopefully all y'all doing good. Here's a Trump executive order restoring truth and sanity to American history. Just the title of this executive order screams mental health issues. Like, who will name something restoring truth and sanity to American history when the history is being revised to recondition American minds, foreigners' minds, like to try to change the global image. And with that executive order, here's what he's doing. This is the Confederate Monument at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Like, it been restored there via the executive order. And these people want to call it the Arlington National Monument when it is in fact the Confederate National Monument. Take a good look at that. And, and what we got here? Sculpture by Moses Ezekiel included a weeping figure of the loyal black mammy as a correction to what he and the UDC saw as lies about history perpetrated by the North. You see that? They call this lady right here the weeping mammy, the slave, the weeping mammy. And I believe that might be their mulatto baby that look like a zaddy right there. Got a star on his collar. Weird. They call it the loyal black mammy. And I don't think this would be something Lincoln Party would want to resurrect, restore, or put forth out there. You see, this monument was dedicated by the United Daughters of the Confederacy. And in that's the Latin phrase stating the victorious cause pleased the gods, but the vanquished pleased Cato. Cato chose it to go with the opposition against Julius Caesar in Rome, and Caesar came out victorious, and Cato tried to keep his head up high and just let people know that even though he lost, he still won. Like, whatever that means, how Future said, dress it up and make it look real. That's what happened. That's what been happening. And you see this. This them doing some reenactments, paying homage to the Confederate soldiers, and I highly doubt that the party of Lincoln, the Abraham Lincoln Republicans, would be okay with this. In fact, they went to war against these people, didn't they? And people like to say the parties didn't switch. And here's the other monument that Trump is restoring in the Arlington National Cemetery. Albert Pike, former brigadier of the Confederate Army. He has a lot of history, a lot of stuff people talks about. I'm not going to go into depth with that, but he was born in Boston, served in the Confederate served as Confederate Indian Commissioner and military commander of Indian Territory during the Civil War. He couldn't afford to attend Harvard, so he went down south, made it down there to Arkansas, and that's why he decided to roll with the Confederacy instead of going with his home team, his home birth. Treacherous, huh? So we're gonna get into these politics. Trump Republicans are different from Abraham Lincoln's Republicans. It's a difference. I think it's a big scam going on, a big finesse move that they're doing, because this is a Civil War map, and as you look at it, you can see that it kind of look like it looks today. Well, at least when Obama was winning elections, but all those red states are actually the Republican states now. But you can see up north in the blue states, those are the Union states during the Civil War. Yeah, so the Democrats, Republicans, we could look at that as just based on the service, but when you take a deep look into it, these are the flags that was flying in Abraham Lincoln's Republican Party. These were the Union flags. There's Abraham Lincoln right there, top hat on, out there with the Union soldiers, generals, officers. Some of y'all probably never saw this before, but that's out there. And then here's the guy, General Sherman. General Sherman, what he didn't play nice. He didn't play nice. He took war as war. See him over here? This is him right here on the cannon, just chilling. This guy right here caught the picture. He like, man, in 2025, somebody gonna see this picture, and I'ma look alive. That's what he doing. As you can see, all the soldiers look clean. They look like they're eating good. They're not missing any meals. They're not on any rations. And this is a picture in Atlanta at Federal Fort Number 7. Federal Fort Number 7. Let's see what General Sherman had to say. All right, this is him writing a letter. I have read your letter of the 11th in the nature of a petition to revoke my orders removing all inhabitants from Atlanta. I have read it carefully and give full credit to your statements of distress that will be occasioned by it, and yet shall not revoke my order. So it's going to be a lot of chaos when I do what I do. And I understand y'all concerned, but I'm not stopping. We're going forward my plan. Simply because my orders are not designed to meet the humanities in this case. When he mentioned humanities, he meaning like take care of refugees, people fleeing, that type of stuff. But to prepare for future struggles in which millions, I said hundreds of millions of good people outside of Atlanta have a deep interest. We must have peace, not only in Atlanta, but in all America. To secure this, we must stop the war that now desolate our once happy and favorite country. To stop war, we must defeat rebel armies that are arrayed against the laws and Constitution which all must respect and obey. I repeat, we must defeat the rebel armies, the Confederate States, the Southern states, today's Republican states of the South, that are arrayed against the laws, against the Constitution, which all must respect and obey. To defeat those armies, we must prepare the way to reach them in their recesses, provided with the arms and instruments which enabled us to accomplish our purpose. Now I know the vindictive nature of our enemy. General Sherman said, now I know the vindictive nature of our enemy. Everybody know what vindictive mean: conniving, plotting, scheming, untrustworthy, traitor, deserter, and that coward. And that we may have many years of military operations from this quarter, and therefore deem it wise and prudent to prepare in that time. The use of Atlanta for warlike purposes is inconsistent with its character as a home for families. This is what Sherman said, y'all, in the letter. And let's see. I'm just gonna skim. Let's see. He's told them, you cannot qualify war in harsher terms than I will. War is cruelty, and you cannot refine it. And those who brought war into our country deserve all the curses and maledictions that people can pour out. Maledictions are like explicit, direct curses and spells that you put upon people. I know that I had no hand in making this war. He said he didn't start it, but he gonna finish it. He gonna deliver that knockout blow, which he did with that march to the sea. I know I had no hand in making this war, and I know I will make more sacrifices than any of you to secure peace. That man said, hey, I'm gonna risk it all. I'm gonna sacrifice whatever I gotta sacrifice just to push to get this victory or secure peace. But you cannot have peace in a division in our company. If the United States submits to a division now, it will not stop, but will go on till we reap the fate of Mexico, which is eternal war. The United States does and must assert its authority wherever it wants that power. If it relaxes one bit to pressure, it is gone. And I know that such is the national feeling. This feeling assumes various shapes, but always comes back to that of the Union. Sherman said he's not playing with these people we gotta get rid of. But I do know when we did when they submit to the division, and that would happen to be the 1877 Compromise, when Bayford became president. That's Atlanta burning right there. Sherman did his thing with his march to the sea, burning. Here's the march to the sea, Ebenezer Creek. This is in Savannah, Georgia, a historic marker. Y'all can look at that. And here's another marker. History of Emancipation, Special Field Orders number 15. And as you read before, Lincoln approved Special Field Orders number 17. And what this did was gave the slaves, which encouraged the enlistment of freemen, and also reserved coastal land from Charleston south to Florida St. Johns River. That's like all the way to Jacksonville. From Charleston all the way to Jacksonville, all that coastline, and 20 miles inward is supposed to be freeman land in 40-acre tracts. And they named it President Andrew Johnson, a Tennessean, a Democrat, that was the vice president of President Lincoln. And by the way, they do have some conspiracy theories that says Albert Pike was involved with Abraham Lincoln's assassination. That's neither here or there, but that's what your Republican, today's Republican, today's Confederate masquerading in the elephant uniform is doing, like, false flagging as Republicans. Like, he's showing a lot of love to the Confederacy. Yeah, ever seen this flag? Yeah, this General Sherman's 23rd Corps battle flag, created out of shredded Confederate flags. That's interesting. Like I showed up before. This is the Union flags. How many of y'all seen these flags before? How many of y'all? Like, but here's what we got going on. We got all these southern states flying the Confederate flags. And those same Republicans in the South recently still got some renditions of the Confederate flags within the state flags today. I think South Carolina just around 2020, 2021 took the Confederate flag down from over the Capitol building because they used to fly the South Carolina flag and the Confederate battle flag simultaneously. Like, yeah, that's the stars and bars. Some more, like, yeah, we see a lot of those flags, but we didn't see too many Union flags, did we? We did. And like I said, those flying in those states in red at the bottom, the southern states. Now look at this electoral map. Every single map shows that the Republican Party is the southern states, the southern states, the southern states of the Confederacy, the Confederate States of America, not a Union flag. So which one Abraham Lincoln Party was doing?
Enslavers.
Check
In
this
my
out.
case, I am. I'm the direct descendant of enslavers. Uh, and that's not an easy thing to say. But I grew up in a time where, you know, that flag and that history was revered. And when I look back, I think it was the conflation of that flag with Southern identity. And it came to mean all of these other things.
Right, that flag represents treachery. That flag represents traitors to the United States of America. That flag represents treason. That flag represents separatists. That flag represents the underlying, the secretive, the covert movements of what we call Republicans today. But I think we need to start doing that. I think we need to start looking at this as the Confederates versus the Union. I think we just need to keep it along like that, so people will get the message, get the clarity, because the politics of the South is the same that it has always been before the war, during the Civil War, after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, until they finally got their way in 1877 when Rutherford B. Hayes became president under the conditions that he removed the federal troops from out the South. And that's when they did everything with voter suppression, assassinating black and Republican politicians. The same people in the South. It's the same old South.
I grew up on the Leonard Skinner shows when they hit, Sweet Home Alabama and the 100-foot by 50-foot Confederate flag dropped at the back of the stage and everybody went nuts, and my daddy was one of them. And then I grew up and I read books. And I think about
Reading is fundamental. Pick up some books and read. While you still can, they cut the internet off. You're not going to learn anything.
someone like Alexander Stevens, and I'm assuming we all know who Alexander Stevens.
Yeah, Alexander Stevens is the vice president of the Confederate States of America. And as you saw earlier, when Lincoln not Lincoln, but General Sherman did his special field order 15 in Savannah, Georgia, that's where he did his cornerstone speech. That's where Alexander Stevens did his cornerstone speech.
And when he was defining what that institution was, he said, its foundation rests, its cornerstone is laid upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery and subordination to the superior race is his natural and born condition.
And that's how he got the black codes at the Reconstruction ended. That's when he got convict leasing at the Reconstruction ended. The loophole in the 13th Amendment is slavery is deemed illegal unless a crime is committed. And I'm hard pressed to say why legislation wasn't passed to strengthen the terms, use precise, exact language instead of leaving opaque, vague language and verbiage within documents that allows the discretion of the people in charge to make the decision according to how they feel. That's how you get like inconsistencies, you know? Inconsistencies. Hey, some people get this, other people get that. You know, harsher sentences.
What the man said. That's what he said it defined. So I don't care about any kind of revisionist history that wishes to place it as something else, because it's not that. And I think about the black communities in Jackson County. I think about people who have descendants here who go back hundreds of years. And what every one of you who voted for that is saying is that you revere a moment in time when their ancestors were in bondage. That's what that means. I view your actions as an act of white supremacy. That's what I view.
He called it out, what it was, white supremacy, and that goes on to this very day. Here's Alexander, his speech, saying the same thing. He did it in Savannah, Georgia, on March 21st, 1861. The great truth is that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal conditions. That explains the Jim Clyburns. That explains the Tim Scotts, the Larry Elders, the Candace Owens, the Officer Tatums. They rather be in subordination to the superior race because to them that beats slavery. And us getting rowdy, going against the system, fighting the system, you know, they just like, you know, on that Rodney King style, can't we all just get along? And that heritage argument, this is how you dismantle it. You bring up Alexander Stevens' cornerstone speech, and where it says the cornerstone of the Confederacy is the Negro is not equal to the white man. That's all you gotta do. Dismantle that. And it was a primary source for understanding the cause of the Civil War. The primary motivation was the preservation and expansion of slavery. That's where you get into what the South got going on now. Back then, the Union, they made slaves 3/5 of a person because they were able to give a totality. Like they would have been running the federal government with the representation of the representatives and everything. And that kind of goes on in some other aspects with today's Republicans. I call them Confederate Republicans sometimes. They don't like it, but oh well. Yeah, you know, they say they claim that they're the party of Lincoln, and as you can see, Lincoln fought the Confederates, and these are current times Republicans. Mississippi flew the Confederate battle flag until 2020. Georgia got a sign adapted as a rendition of the Confederate flag. So does Alabama, Florida, Tennessee. South Carolina just flew the flag off real. Yes, that's the Mississippi flag. Yeah, again, here's the states, and you can see what's going on. Look at the flags. Look at the flags that they got here. The Georgia flag, the Tennessee flag. Like you can see all these flags. I believe that's the North Carolina flag coming up, the Mississippi flag. Lincoln Party would not be flying those flags. I'm sorry. The party of Lincoln, they hated the Confederates so much that they created a battle flag out of shredded Confederate flags. So they won't be saluting one or raising one up above grounds because those are the traitors. The Alabama current flag, Arkansas, Florida, you name it, Georgia, Tennessee, like all those flags look the same. They love to make the claim. Let me go back. They love making the claim that the Democrats created the KKK, when in fact it was the Confederacy, former Confederate soldiers in the state of Tennessee, Pulaski, Tennessee. They're the ones that created the Ku Klux Klan. So we got to get away from the thing saying Democrats created it and Republicans are good when the Republican Party has been infiltrated and taken over by the South, and the South are still pledging allegiance to the Confederacy. That's why we got all these crazy parties. That's why there's no getting along. Look at the map. Where's Tennessee at? Tennessee is right here, red state. It's a Confederate. It's a Confederate place. Look, Confederacy. The Confederate states are in red. You see, Tennessee is right there above Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and right to the left of North Carolina, and right below Virginia. You know what I mean? Like it's no secret. Oh yeah, I got a little clip. Let's check this out.
Now we're here making Los Angeles a safer place since we won't have politicians in here. We do that ourselves. So that's what we're here today. As you can see.
Trump is using Confederate political tactics. They're the ones that mastered voter intimidation, using the Night Riders, using the KKK, using intimidating factors like, if you don't vote Democratic, you ain't gonna make it home. You're not gonna have a job. Like, it's consequences for not voting Democrat. If you was a black man back in those days, that's why when they say we had a right to vote since 1870, which is true, but because of all that stuff that been going on with the black codes, Jim Crow, the lynchings, the killings, the federal government unable to uphold the Constitution and provide protections, that is why the Voting Rights Act of 1965, don't quote me right now, I got brain freeze, but that's why the Voting Rights Act had to be created in the mid-60s. And here's Gavin Newsom again.
And they want the power that gerrymandering provides because they know what Donald Trump knows. He's going to lose the midterms. He knows de facto his presidency ends in 17 months when Speaker Jeffries is back in office. He knows it. Why else?
Right. And that's the thing. Like, it's good white people out there. And there's a Confederate white supremacist class out there. Like, they're present. They are present. And what they're doing is scared because of the election coming up in 2026, the midterms. So they are gerrymandering, just like they always do. They are masters at gerrymandering and getting the votes, manipulating the representation within the state. Like, the South focuses on controlling the state, while Democrats typically focus on presidency, if you will.
Why else would you try to rig the system? Why else would you make the phone call? He's a failed president. Who else sends ICE, same time, having a conversation like this? Someone who's weak. Someone who's broken. Someone whose weakness is masquerading as strength.
Oh no!
The most unpopular president in modern history. An economy that's collapsing all around him. You saw the new wholesale prices going up almost a full percentage point today. Inflation is going up.
And it is. Right after Trump said that inflation was down, right on Fox News, they did come out with that report. Again, these are the tactics of the Confederacy. That's why the Ku Klux Klan was created, to be intimidating, quote-unquote, law and order organizations to keep the Negroes in their subordinate positions. Don't forget that. This is how Reconstruction ended. Blacks were doing their thing politically. The South was picking up steam, making good efforts. And them people was like, I'll turn in my grave before I let that happen. Here's another clip. By 1870, Reconstruction had transformed Southern politics. Republicans controlled the Southern state government, and African American lawmakers had been elected to lead the state legislators. Louisiana had 3 black lieutenant governors between 1868 and 1877, and Mississippi elected a black Speaker of the House in 1872, future Representative John R. Lynch. But only in South Carolina, where African Americans accounted for 60% of the population, were black majorities possible in the state house from 1868 to 1876, and in the state senate from 1872 to 1876. Black voters were critical to the Republican Party's election fortunes. Throughout the South during this period, by 1877, roughly 2,000 black men held local, state, and federal offices throughout the South. And the South said, they'll be damned if that happened again. That's what happened. The Confederacy said, I'll be damned if we let that happen. The demise of the Reconstruction. Across the South in the summer and fall of 1874, black and Republican voters faced unending physical violence and intimidation from Democrats. They say Democrats, but let's just say former Confederate States of America members from the Confederates, intent on asserting their control of the region, state, and local governments, no matter the means. Black members from the South, along with Republican colleagues, also encountered dangerous conditions. In his unsuccessful re-election bid that fall, James Rapier and his backers faced stolen and destroyed ballot boxes, bribery, fraudulent vote counts, armed intimidation, and violence in his southeastern Alabama district. In the South, in the Confederate state, and we just seen the Alabama flag. A congressional investigation into the 1874 elections in Alabama, coupled with investigations into white violence in the South, had led Republican members to push for federal legislation designed to ensure integrity of elections across the region. As a result, an 1875 proposed federal elections bill was drafted to preserve access to the polls in the South. Opponents quickly criticized the proposal as federal overreach. And who's always complaining about federal overreach today? Who's making the case of limited government? Who's always making the case for states' rights? The whole Confederacy States of America. The former Confederate States posing as Republicans. It's like a lot that went on. Like, you probably take a screenshot, pause it here, read through that if you want to know some more. And this goes to the Colfax, Louisiana massacre in 1873. And this is the Supreme Court. In 1876, the Supreme Court decision in the United States versus Cruikshank further limited the power of the federal government by overturning the convictions of the perpetrators of a 1873 Colfax, Louisiana massacre, in which dozens of black residents were murdered at a local courthouse. The court ruled that the charges of murder and conspiracy were under the jurisdiction of the states rather than the federal government, leaving black Americans and others targeted for political violence to seek redress from southern state governments and local law enforcement. The weakened Civil Rights Act of 1875 also proved difficult to enforce. And that's what's been the problem with these Civil Rights Acts. Like, there was no enforcement code. Like, we have codes and laws where the federal government could get involved if there's a natural disaster to strike a state, like we're able to see in the National Guard in. Something like, kind of like what Trump's doing right now, right? Although the law brought the federal power to enforce equal treatment, the government lacked the power to initiate civil rights lawsuits. And we already know who blocked the civil rights lawsuits. Like, you better have a pigeon that you can go ahead and fly out and make it to the White House or somebody. This required the aggrieved party to take an initial step of filing a lawsuit, a legal and financial hurdle for many African Americans. And that's the problem as well, too. If you have the finances, if you have reparations, you'll be able to go through litigation, go through these courts, and get justice. The constant threat of violence, intimidation, and job loss in the South deterred many from ever taking legal action under the law. In 1883, the Supreme Court struck down the provisions in the law prohibiting discrimination by private businesses in the civil rights cases, again emphasizing that the federal courts only had jurisdiction over discriminatory practices by the states. And is that not what we see going on with Republicans today? Like, they're intimidating Budweiser because they had a transsexual person in the Budweiser commercial. They force companies, private-owned companies, mind you, they force private-owned companies to change up their DEI practices. And, they have a problem with that, and they like to say didn't earn it. And I like to call it deserved every incentive. But the primary beneficiary was the white woman. And also the primary beneficiary of affirmative action was white woman. But, that's something later.
And redistricting is supposed to happen once every 10 years. That's when the census happens. He's saying, I want a mid-cycle redistrict because I only have a three-seat majority, and I need a bigger cushion. So get me 5 more seats. So Greg Abbott calls a special session, not about the flooding, not about what happened in Camp Mystic, but so that he can steal seats from the Democrats so that Jazzy won't be able to have her seat any longer. It's important to remind people that in 2021, there was a bill, the For the People Act, H.R. 1, and it would have banned all gerrymandering in every single...
And it would have banned gerrymandering and made things, the voices of the people, like your vote would count, your vote would mean more. But one thing about the Confederate Republicans, they do not want to compete. That's what this is about. We tell people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. We tell people to work hard. But politicians, big businesses, and everything in between, the common worker, the working man, the hourly wage worker, the independent contractor, people that are salaried, commission and all that, like they don't really care about us like that. And that's the whole thing right here. Like they want to reward mediocrity, being lazy, and just because of what they look like and who they are aligned with, like it's crazy.
Democrat voted for it, and every single Republican voted against it. Republicans want it this way. They want to use this to their advantage, and of course, there are some states. If you can do it, why wouldn't you get as many seats as possible? But the way in which Abbott is going about this has made people, even like Eric.
And that's the issue with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court and Congress legislation. The Supreme Court does not want anything to do with gerrymandering. They said they'll leave it up to the states. Like, basically let the states decide how they want to do their gerrymandering. And gerrymandering is some nasty work.
Who runs an organization that is minus 15 overall on how he's handling it, and minus 24 with independents.
I like this lady. She be coming with it on the 5 on Fox News. She comes with it sometimes. She's alright.
Polling out 49% saying he's gone too far, and 54% saying.
I know she got a job to do. You know what I'm saying? She gotta keep them checks coming in, but every now and then, like she throw that curveball and strike them out, man. Get them on off the field, start a new inning.
That they disapprove of the workplace rates. And we know that he's also underwater on immigration in our own polling, minus 7 there. So when we say the people don't like this, they don't like it. That doesn't mean that Democrats aren't still unpopular. That doesn't mean, I don't know, if the election was held again today, Donald Trump might very well win again. If it was I would. I'm just.
They keep saying Donald Trump will win again. They just don't realize how many black people did not participate in the 2024 elections. Like Kamala Harris lost a couple states. I believe one by 11,000 votes, one by 20,000 votes. She lost Georgia by 120, 110 or so thousand votes. Like she lost states that Barack Obama would have won just because he has more charisma.
Saying that you can't deny the fact that the direction, and Greg, you always say, directionally, where are we going? Directionally, it has been heading in the negative direction on every single major indicator of success for.
And y'all do notice he's going out there. None of these states in the red. None of these states. He's not going there with them. He's not going there with them. Let's see what the electoral map look like in 2024 after the election. All right, D.C. really don't count, but it's kind of sad people not up on game with that. And everybody should know Wilmington, North Carolina was the only successful coup d'etat in the history of the United States, and a story of racial terror largely obscured from the annals of American history. This is the history Donald Trump don't want to get into the gist about, because what happened after the 1877 compromise changed the trajectory of the United States indefinitely. It changed everything. In 1898, a group of white rebels, angry and fearful at the newly elected biracial local government, joined forces with area militias to rain terror on Wilmington, North Carolina, then the South's most progressive black majority city. After stoking fear of a black uprising, that would upend their way of life, endanger their women, and bring about them unfathomable new American reality in which black men, not white, govern. White city leaders pledged to choke the current of the Cape Fear with carcasses, rather than allow Wilmington's black Americans to succeed and lead. When the carnage ended, more than 100 black government officials, city councilmen, the city clerk, the treasurer, the city attorney, and others had been forced from their elected roles. Somewhere between 60 and 250 black citizens were murdered. You see that big discrepancy between that number of 60 and 250? I'm going to say that probably more than that was murdered. That's not a massacre. That's an ethnic cleansing because it was racial. After the coup, for which no one was ever prosecuted or punished, more than 100,000 registered black voters fled the city. No black citizen would again serve in public office for 3/4 of a century. It was a massacre, says Christopher Everett, director of Wilmington on Fire, a documentary on the uprising. The massacre was kept secret for over 100 years, and that's one of many. In the years leading up to the 1898 Wilmington stood as the most progressive city in the American South, bustling, integrated port. The town historians say was what the New South could have become after the Civil War. By 1896, nearly 126,000 black men in Wilmington were registered voters. The city's flourishing black middle class boasted some 65 doctors, lawyers, and educators, scores of barbers and restaurant owners, public health workers, members of the police force and fire department. And just 3 decades after emancipation, black Republicans held multiple positions of power, serving as city councilmen, magistrates, and other elected officials. The integration resulted from fusion politics, a political phenomenon in North Carolina that joined the Populist Party, comprised mostly of poor white farmers, and the Republican Party, a political affiliation of the choice for free black Americans, into one entity. It was a political party of choice for free black Americans because the Democrats were racist. Because the Democrats were the Confederates. And it wasn't really a party thing. It was about those are racists over there. In that side of the party, those are Confederates over there. So I'm going over here. And that's what we're seeing today. Like, a lot of people are saying get out the Democratic plantation. But they refuse to acknowledge all the racism that's are rampant, present, in your face in the Republican Party. Like, they can't be mad at people for feeling that way. If it look like a duck, quack like a duck, you know, that's just what it is. And here they are kind of posted up. Plot to reclaim white voters and restore white power. Photos of the aftermath of the 1898 Wilmington, North Carolina coup and massacre. Stop calling it a massacre. That was an ethnic cleansing. Co-instigator Alfred M. Waddell, who promised before the coup to choke the current of the Cape Fear River with black bodies. That's them. They done burnt the courthouse down. Fearing what they feared, I gotta go. Fearing the loss of white supremacy, Wilmington Democrats formulated multi-pronged strategies to retake power and strip black citizens of their political and economic agency. Powerful state and local Democrats, aka Confederates, included Josephus Daniels, the publisher of the News and Observer, the largest newspaper in North Carolina, future state governor Charles Aycock, and former congressman and Confederate soldier Alfred Moore Waddle schemed to lure white voters away from the Fusion Party and against the black citizens in general. So, get that. Charles Aycock, a former congressman and Confederate soldier. The Democrats were the Confederacy. We need to look at it that way. We need to look at it that way and realize that it was the Confederacy. And it was in the South. North Carolina is in the South. It was one of the Confederate states that took up arms, denounced their citizenship when they seceded from the Union and became traitors. And that's the party of the Republicans today. Daniels used his paper to publish outlandish false accounts of the Negro Menace, and that goes on today. Who's using that right now? Who's in charge right now? Donald Trump is using that, coming up with some fake crime stats in Washington, D.C., and using false language, false, bad representation, bad discernment, bad judgment, bad critical thinking skills that the Home Rule Act was okay for him to use to put National Guard and federal boots on the ground to combat crime. Federal troops, federal military, using the military on American citizens, that's why the Home Rule Act, that should have been like a no-no from the jump. Like, that's why he got Pam Bondi there. She don't have experience. All he got is a whole bunch of dude boys. All he got is people that want to make their mark, want to stay in the political game, want their positions, want to be renowned, want to get money. That's all he got. I don't know what he promising them people, because let's just keep it real. That man was off 4 years while Biden was in office. Y'all are not being honest. We are not being honest. American citizens aren't being honest. Like, no one's being honest. Like, that man was scheming and plotting, knowing exactly what he was going to be doing as president and lining up other businesses because they already know what's coming down the park. They already know what's happening. Oh, we were speaking about voter suppression, right? The 3/5 of the vote, right, with the slaves, right? I did say that I was going to come back to that. And here's the other thing. Gerrymandering, using prisoners. We just went through what Gavin Newsom went through. Voter intimidation. That's a Confederacy tactic. Using votes of people in bondage, people that aren't free, people that can't vote, using their bodies to gain political representation is what's being used in states like Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, other states. They'll use the prison population within the county. You know, the prisons usually be in the rural areas way out ducked off somewhere. They're adding those numbers so they could get funding through the census, and you use those bodies as well for political benefits. Let's say you got a population of 500 people, and you got the prison population, like, you know, got 2,000 people up in that prison. Some prisons even got like more than that. So your area got 2,500 people. So you get funding for 2,500 people, but only 500 people are getting it. And they're complaining about people on welfare, and another story. Prisoners are among the country's least powerful people, but every 10 years, where they're counted in a census, numbers can shift political power in the United States. And as map makers turns last year's census tallies of incarcerated people and other U.S. residents into next decade's voting districts. 11 states are trying to block what critics call prison gerrymandering. The little well-known practice, I added well-known to that, involves determining the areas elected officials represent with census numbers that count prisoners as residents of where they are incarcerated. With those tallies, some redistricting officials have created local voting districts filled mostly with people who are locked from behind bars and in most states cannot vote. There's a growing movement, though, to modify those census numbers before they're used for redistricting by reallocating the counts of incarcerated people to where they last lived before they was in prison. And I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. I see absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. And here's the states. States with 2021 redistricting rules for ending prison gerrymandering. The yellow is state legislators only, and the green is congressional and state legislators. All right, so New Jersey, Maryland, Washington, California, Nevada, and Colorado are those states. And in New York, it's only for state legislation, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Delaware. Notice all those states. Notice all those states, right? You know, it's all those states. You know, it's all those states. But when you come here, you see that. You see that. You see that. And then when you come back to that, come back to this map showing the states with the type of voting districts affected. State legislative only, that's in yellow, that's New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Delaware. And green is for both congressional and state legislative. That's New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, Washington, Nevada, Colorado, and California. And when we come to the electoral map, not really big difference in those maps, huh? Not really a big difference. The 11 states with laws redistricting are redistricting commission resolutions for reassigning prisoner counts in this redistricting cycle. Each have their own way of modifying the census tally. Some local governments have also developed methods to avoid forming districts made up primarily of incarcerated people. Illinois have a new state law that's expected to go in effect in time for redistricting after the 2030 census. And Colorado's Independent Congressional Redistricting Commission decided last month not to reallocate prisoner counts for withdrawn congressional maps, despite a requirement under state law, which some consider unenforceable in the light of recent Colorado Supreme Court ruling. So that goes into depth about that. And as we can see, what states are the 3/5 states? What were the arguments of the 3/5 states? The South wanted every slave to count, to get extra representation. The North said, "No, we'll give you 3/5 though. We'll work out a deal." That's why it's called the 3/5 compromise. If it wasn't for that, the South would have more representation and would have had more presidents, which wouldn't have been a good thing, because we could see what the president is doing now. You can look at the map and see. You know what states got the most prisons up in there? You know, Texas. Yeah, I spoke about 3/5 a little bit. Yeah, the South Carolina Ku Klux Klan trials, 1871 to 1872. In 1871, the Ku Klux Klan in South Carolina embarked on one of the worst campaigns of domestic terrorism in American history. The group employed vicious assaults, rape, and murder to trample on the political rights of African Americans and attempt to oust the state's Reconstruction government. In response to this explosion of political and radical violence, the federal government engaged in a sustained effort to bring the perpetrators to justice. This effort was met with some success, resulting in a high conviction rate, although some of the most powerful Klan members were able to escape justice. The Klan trials, while achieving the immediate aim of halting the violence, turned out to be something of a hollow victory. The court's legal decisions rejected the prosecutor's attempt to establish durable protection for the rights of African Americans through a broad interpretation of the 14th and 15th Amendment. Yes, something I said earlier. They wanted durable protection for the rights of African Americans through a broad interpretation of the 14th and 15th Amendments. The Klan violence stemmed from the state election of 1870, the first held after the ratification of the 15th Amendment. African American voters voted in large numbers, enabling Republicans to dominate the election. As a result, most of South Carolina's white population viewed the new state government as illegitimate. It's something about these southern states, these southern Confederate states. These southern Confederate states apologize and sympathizers. These southern Confederate states that other states want to have close proximity with. It's something about them. Like Republican Governor Robert K. Scott angered whites further by organizing armed black militia companies with the goal of protecting black political rights. Many white citizens claim to feel threatened by armed black militia companies with the goal of protecting the black political rights. That's the same game they played today. Oh, he had a gun. I was in fear of my life. Oh, he had a gun. When you got a gun in your hand, back then, like, that was the equalizer. Like, being able to protect yourself and bearing arms, you should be able to protect yourself, right? When you are able to protect yourself, that's the equalizer. Like, I don't care how many it is. Nobody trying to die early on some humbug type stuff. You know what I mean? Many white citizens claim to feel threatened by the sight of African Americans who have been denied the right to own firearms under the slave regime, drilling with their rifles in public, asserting that they had no recourse but to wrest back political control by force. White men of all social classes joined the Ku Klux Klan, and we know it. The garbage man, the janitor, the school principal, the police officer, the district attorney, the judge, the congressman, the president of the United States, the governor, lieutenant governor, state attorney general, the tax assessor, the mechanic, anybody, the landscaper. Yeah, white men of all social classes joined the Ku Klux Klan in large numbers with the goal of ensuring the Democrats would defeat the radical ticket in 1872 and thereafter. Beginning in 1871, the Klan imposed a reign of terror on the South Carolina upcountry, an area where the state more radically mixed, where an area of the state more racially mixed than the heavily African American low country. And as we know, South Carolina was like 60% African American. So there's no way, unless, you know, they took violence as a path, could those former Confederate people, the white supremacists, could get back in political office. The process by which Democrats reclaim power by ousting Reconstruction state governments throughout the South and establishing white supremacist rule in their place, called a redemption. Yeah, they called themselves the Redeemers at that time. By its advocates, was accomplished in large part by violence against African Americans and white Republicans, as they did elsewhere in the South. Klan members in the South Carolina used night riding as the primary means of attaining their aims. Under the cover of darkness and with anonymity provided by their disguises, groups of armed men on horseback marauded through the countryside, raiding the homes of suspected Republican supporters. Although some victims were white Republicans, African Americans were subjected to the most severe violence. The most common form of assault was whipping, but the raiders also engaged in brutal beatings, rape, and murder by hanging or shooting. Women and children were not spared from the violence, particularly if a man was the target of the raid and could not be found. So they were killing women and children. And that's what this guy is on. That's what this guy is on. And this is what, remember, General Sherman said to stop the war, we have to go against the people. He said the enemy is vindictive. The enemy has a vindictive nature. And he's right, because they didn't even calm down after that.
Rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back under the authorities.
Isn't he sound like the Confederates? When they said they were going to take the South back, the South going to rise. We're going to take our political party back. We aren't going to have these people that aren't in line with white supremacy be in charge over us.
Vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that.
He clearly doesn't know what he's doing. A lawsuit was filed. Then Pam Bondi withdrew her plan of making the commissioner of the DEA the police chief over the D.C. area. Like, they just making a hot mess. Like, lawsuits need to go ahead and come on out, man. Yeah. Hey, to the residents of D.C., hey, the cops roughing y'all up, file federal charges. Don't file within your state. File federal charges. You file federal charges, you'll have a better chance.
This is what we are seeing in D.C. during the federal takeover. You can see multiple tanks behind me as well as National Guard members, and this is at Union Station. President Donald Trump has now requested more National Guard members, and the governors of South Carolina and West Virginia are now sending in hundreds of them. And that's on top of the more than 100 D.C. Guard members.
We all know what West Virginia about, don't we? So he done ramped up. More National Guards are coming to D.C. because he see the protesters out there. But I haven't seen too many FBAs out there. I haven't seen too much of that. Most of it been, other people.
That have already been deployed here. Now, what we learned from the White House is that at this point, they are not armed, but that they could be. I've been tracking everything that has been happening during this takeover. It was a week ago that the president announced he'd hold a press conference to stop violent crime in Washington, D.C. At the press conference Monday, the president announced it was, quote, Liberation Day for D.C. He put the D.C. Police Department under direct federal control.
Going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
The mayor and other city officials responded for one of the first times following months of warnings from the president.
We are going to do our level best to maintain, as the chief talked about, to maintain the trust that D.C. residents have in us.
Tuesday, I was there as the D.C. National Guard arrived and was deployed in D.C.
He got the call yesterday around 2 p.m. Then he received some orders stating that he has to be deployed for the next 13 days.
7 News continued to track the impact on the ground from the takeover. D.C. crime was already going down before the takeover. Crime stats show no significant change.
I think a lot of us are questioning, and I definitely myself am questioning, why now?
Trump showed up with his own list of crime stats and data. And anybody could manipulate data because the way CompStat was created. But if we're going to be clear about crime, if you're going to fight crime, you have to look at the criminals. Like, when you take the extra step of using per capita data, like, that's just propaganda data to me at this point. Because if you're using per capita data, we should be using per capita data all across the board. We should be using per capita data for school funding, for jobs, who's getting, for unemployment rates. We should be using that all across the board. And if we use the per capita data, we'll see with the police shootings that FBAs, Black Americans, non-white individuals are shot and gunned down by police more than the white counterparts who are more present in the United States. We could take all those steps, and then when you really do the math with the per capita data, when you look at the total population of the black population, and then you break down that per capita data, you'll see that less than 1% of the total black population are arrested. I repeat, arrested for violent crimes. Like, that's the biggest trick in the book. And the reason why a lot of law agencies do not report to the FBI anymore is because of the 2019 FBI Table 43 chart. When you go to that chart, you will see white people accounted for 70% of all arrests, and black people were around 26, 27, 28% or so. And what that breaks down is there's a judicial and a jury issue that's going on with the convictions and the sentencing. That's the issue. And we all know, like, looking at everything, the Confederacy, they are well versed in politics. They want political power because that's where the power is. They want to be the judges. They want to be the police officers. They want to be the district attorneys. They want to be in the positions of powers. They want to be the overseers. That's what their role was during slavery. Yeah, not everybody owned slaves, but everybody participated in the overseeing of the slavery process within the United States. So, yeah, so.
Now with this federal takeover?
We learned from the White House that the operation started before Monday's announcement, adding that since last week, there have been 240 arrests, most undocumented immigrants. Thursday, Attorney General.
Y'all heard that, folks? 240 arrests. 240 arrests.
Most undocumented immigrants.
Most of them undocumented immigrants.
Pam Bondi handed over control of the D.C. Police Department to the head of the DEA.
We were surprised without notice. We got the order.
Attorney General Brian Schraub sued the Trump administration.
Very gratified that the judge today recognized that is flagrantly illegal.
keeping MPD Chief Pamela Smith in control as DC police step up its cooperation with federal immigration officials during the enforcement takeover. The White House says there are 22 teams operating across DC right now. This will be the first full weekend under the federal takeover. The White House says there are still specialized teams developing for targeted enforcement. For now, reporting from Union Station, Felicia Ashley, 7 News.
And my thing is, how are you going to fight crime? You can't fight crime like that. Like, everybody, when the block is hot, when the heat is on, the criminals stay home, they get low. They might even go out of D.C., go out to New York, go to New Jersey, lay low for a hot little minute, wait for this to go ahead, cool off. Like, this is propaganda. This is not how you fight crime. This is not how you combat crime. And geopolitically, a show of force showing a police state, that shows weakness, and that also shows tyranny. And what's sad is people are so caught up on race, and that's a not me problem, that they do not realize to get bad policies into play, they will use the black card. They will use racial politics, because black people are the low-hanging fruit, where we get the least propaganda that favor us. We get the propaganda that always discredit us. You get a college degree, that's affirmative action. You get a business professional job, corporate job, white collar job, oh, that's DEI. Like, you're frowned upon. It's like you're in a catch-22 situation. You lose. But just remember, DEI, deserve every incentive, because you gotta work twice as hard. You're gonna have to go through the fire. They're gonna check you. They're gonna make sure you know your stuff. They're gonna make sure you're on your game. They're gonna, you're gonna have to work twice as hard, get half the reward, and all that did was made you better. And I just encourage people, like, gotta start using collusion tactics. You working in the courthouse, man, start looking at those documents, seeing what's up with them documents, seeing who got homes up for auction, properties up for auction, cars for auction, where those auctions going on. Pass the word out. Who home is lost because of taxes. Pass the word out. You a store manager, you're one of the top ranking managers, you got a position, go ahead and look and see who they're getting their goods from, who's on that bill of lading, see who the shipper is, see what's going on, where they're getting their goods and general freight from, where they're getting their supplies from, who's their supplier. We do that in the streets all the time. Oh, this dude got that good work. I need to see who his supplier is. See, that's the thing. We gotta start going in the thing of competing, going in the competitive arena. It's okay to be nosy and look at some paperwork, look at some documents. You're an accountant somewhere, CFO. I know there's some CFOs out there. Look through those documents, and see what them bank loans looking like. Who's loaning money?
Lawlessness. And we have the slums too. We have slums here. We're getting rid of them. I know it's not politically correct.
Well, he's referring to a provision in the DC Home Rule Act which allows him to declare a police emergency relating to a federal matter. They haven't defined what the emergency is, especially with crime rates at a 30-year low in the District of Columbia. And he's deployed.
Right.
Deployed the National Guard. At least I'm happy to see that he acknowledges he has the power to activate the National Guard. That was what he refused to do 4.5 years ago when the Capitol and his own vice president and Congress were under attack.
Exactly. January 6th happened, he was still under control. Since when does Trump wait for anybody to allow him to do anything? I'll wait.
justified the mob violence that he unleashed against us, and he sat on his hands for many hours, and then later asserted he somehow didn't have the authority to deploy the National Guard.
And this guy right here, I'm gonna wrap it up real soon, but I like the way he broke down gerrymandering, kept it real simple for people. Give it a look.
Partisan gerrymandering is when the political party in power draws these election maps in a way that ensures they stay in power. So let's pretend that Orange and Durham County are stand-ins for North Carolina overall.
Very clever way to do that.
To determine which basketball team is the best basketball team in the state. If I were a Duke fan and I were in charge of drawing these maps, even though there are an equal number of voters total, I can draw the maps in a way that ensures Duke's victory.
Smoking that kush. Yeah. Just kidding.
Around this little pocket of Duke voters, right? So they would be a 4-2, so Duke is a point. I see all these UNC voters, and I can't do anything about that.
Yeah, this how they're doing the gerrymandering out there in Texas, North Carolina. And nobody seemed to want to bring up the fact that, the southern states, the Republican states of today, not Lincoln's Republicans, they have the poorest states and the poorest counties in the United States of America. And I'm like, people want to have all white cities and stuff like that, and I'm like, y'all kind of got already all white states. Like nobody's really in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, Iowa, Oregon like that really, So I'm like, the reason y'all down here, y'all just want to terrorize people because y'all don't have anything else better to do.
Here, right? Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to pack all these voters in this county into one district, oddly shaped district, and then I'm going to draw the rest so that boom, 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 3, 1. Even though in this entire state of North Carolina there are about 100 voters, I have now done it to where Duke gets 6 representatives and UNC gets 2. That is gerrymandering. Let's take a look at some very fast numbers. There are 2.4 million Democrats in North Carolina. There are 2.2 million Republicans. The 2022 congressional map came out to a 7 Republican, 7 Democrat margin. That was after court intervention. The 2024 map drawn by the Republicans in the General Assembly just the other day, all but ensured Republicans got 11 and 3 Democrats. Even though the numbers are so much closer.
They don't want to compete. That's the whole thing. Their job is to control and be performative boy kings, like the one that we have in the White House right now. Like, have the boy king complex. I bet that man got some butter soft hands because he never did a hard day of work in his life. Never probably picked up a hammer for a prop or whatever. But he's just a silver spoon, spoiled, immature person, man. Like, with some mental health issues. He's narcissistic. He just had people eating out of his hands, even though he contradicted himself all the time. And he talked with the vernacular of a 4-year-old, not a 4-year-old, I'll say a 4th grader. I'll give him that much. He got to communicate with his base with 4th grader terminology, grammar, and verbiage, and he had to repeat it over and over, had a meeting with Putin and it was good and all that, you know. And he listened. He said, if I was president, the war wouldn't have never started. Yeah, that's what Putin said. I highly doubt Putin said anything like that.
They could skew the maps toward the Republicans. Check back with Carter and Pine as we cover this issue for the next couple of days. They ain't going anywhere.
All right, folks, that's the show. If y'all stuck with me to the end, you a real one. Appreciate it. I really thank y'all. And that was my presentation of, you know, the Confederacy is still here. It's still here. Never went nowhere. And I think it's time we start realizing that politically. And do what we have to do, folks. Yeah, the Democrats got you on a plantation in the house, and the Republicans got you outside the plantation working in the field. Take that, do with what you like. Out.